Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to episode number 21 of the Walk the Talk podcast. Hello, it's me, Rachael, your host here at the Walk the Talk podcast. I hope this finds you well, whatever you've been up to. I hope you've had a great week so far. I've had a great week so far because I had the pleasure of talking to the wonderful Lester Savage from Primal Life all about sleep and stress this week. Yes, I know, very hot topics at the moment, especially in the media, and I wanted to get Lester on the show to talk to him about the importance of a good night's sleep. This is a really great interview, so make sure you grab a cup of tea or get your headphones on and get out there and go for a walk and listen, because you're going to learn some really great stuff in here that will help to improve not just your sleep but your overall health as well. So sit back, chill out and enjoy this wonderful episode. So welcome, Lester, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on.
So today we are going to get into the sort of nitty-gritty subject of sleep, which is something that I've been desperate to speak to someone about on the podcast. But before we go into any of that, I thought it would be a really good idea to sort of get a little bit about background about yourself, about you, and tell me a little bit about what you do. Tell me a bit about you, how you got into doing what you do, and a little bit about your business, and just go for it. Like, we might as well just go straight in about it and find out a bit more about you. So yeah.
No mucking about, right?
No.
Sure thing.
So, for example, someone, if you were standing in a lift with someone and you got stuck and you were making sort of small talk and someone said, "So what do you do?" How would you answer it?
Right. Oh, okay. The thing is, me and my business partner, we were trying to find out what it is that I do for, on and off for a couple of years now, I think. Because there didn't really seem to be a word for it. The best word that we've kind of come across for it is a biohacker, but that still seems to be quite a loose term. I think some people assume that biohacking might mean putting chlorophyll in your eyes so you can see in the dark, which, believe it or not, some people are actually doing that. But it was more about finding out, I guess it's more about looking at health and wellness through a complete holistic perspective. So I think myself and a lot of people believe that if you're suffering from one symptom, it meant that it could have been one cause. So they say, okay, well, that means X must cause Y. If we've got something like IBS, for example, then IBS would have been caused by this. If you've got knee pain, it would have been caused by this, as opposed to it could be caused by X, Y, Z, W, and T. So it was about trying to find out, is there a system where if you're following essentially more than one principle, that generally your health, physically and mentally, will be optimized? And I was obsessed with finding out what those principles could be. So I read just over 300 books. I trained in numerous amounts of therapies, so hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, solution-focused therapy, NLP. I started to look through the nutrition aspect. I looked at the fitness, spoke to trainers, spoke to doctors, and literally it just became my obsession for probably about 7 years. And the first person that it helped was me, because I was, at the time when I was really delving into this, I was 22 and a half stone. I was depressed, I was anxious, my sleep pattern was awful, I was shutting out my friends and lying to them about where I was living, because I lived in this horrible box flat, which was literally so small, the only way you could eat was by on your bed. So I said the breakfast in bed wasn't a luxury for me, it was a necessity. You'd be sitting there sort of up against the back of the bed, and you could pull the oven down and put a pizza onto your plate and just eat in bed. So I was miserable. So depression, or a lot of mental health back then, and even a lot of fitness and nutrition advice back then, I mean, like anything, it's just not as up to date as it is now. And mental health has certainly grown as, not in popularity, but grown in awareness over the last 7 years. I think mental health used to be a really taboo subject about 7 years ago. No one really knew what it was they were feeling or why they were feeling a particular way. And now that's not the case, which I think is amazing. I think over the last 4 years, the awareness has really grown of that. But I wanted to know what was happening while I was feeling the way that I felt. And it didn't matter what I looked at. And I mean, I've even spent the last year and a half living in a Buddhist center, and even though I'm not religious, I just wanted to see, actually, are there even philosophies from 2,500 years that might have some answers? And they did. But what was really interesting about all of those therapies, whether it's a spiritual practice like Buddhism or Taoism or a Stoic philosophy from 2,000 years ago, or the most up-to-date neuroscience, there were all patterns between them. There were all things that they seem to give as a universal message. So when I delved in a little bit deeper, suddenly these answers started popping up. So I guess you could say I've used a combination of those things, and that's how I help clients. I've recently written a book about it. We've created this online course that's helping a lot of people at the moment. And the answer came down to the fact that it's our biochemistry. But people forget that our biochemistry is affected by so many different things. What happens when someone is depressed or anxious or overweight is they'll go to a doctor, and sometimes they're given a pill that artificially changes their biochemistry. And I have no stigma against medication like that. If there's a natural way that we can test first that maybe doesn't give as many side effects, then I always think that's worth a shot. So the most important thing that I learned is that actually our bodies have been the exact same for the last 200,000 years. And so a lot of people just assume we've always lived in these agricultural societies, and actually for the last 10,000 years they'd be spot on. But actually that's only 5% of the time that we've had these bodies. So the moment that we start to feel a particular way, generally it doesn't matter who you are, you can find some sort of link to why that might have been the case and why that might have been helpful 200,000 years ago when there's a lot more danger around, but might not be as helpful now. And weight issues, sleep issues, mental health issues, they all seem to have these links to the fact that, well, actually, of course you've got something like that if you've got a caveman body living in the 21st century. So that's a very long-winded explanation of what I do.
That's incredible. No, I absolutely love it. It's fascinating to hear, everything that you... Do you mind if I ask what age you are? Because you do not look very old to have done all of this.
Well, I moisturise a lot, Rachel. I'm actually 73.
Oh my goodness.
No, I'm 26.
Wow. Now, the reason I ask that is because at the age of 26, to have done all this research, to have, gone out of your way to learn all of this, why did you do that? Why? What set it off? What started it? Tell me why.
Oh, okay. I think when I was maybe 16, perhaps, I think my dad had just recently gotten into a career in sales, and he loved it. But I think, like a lot of people who are into sales and don't really know how to find their feet, he got obsessed with reading these sales and motivational books. So when we would be in the car going on long journeys, he'd put on one of these self-development tapes.
Right.
And often he'd put on someone by, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Tony Robbins.
Yes.
He's a big speaker in the self-development world. And I, like a lot of people, started to become really fascinated by what this guy was saying, because it was the first person to ever say, okay, this is how you think about life, but actually there's a whole set of ways that you can play this game. And that really opened me up to think, okay, well, I thought that life always had to be done this way, that you get this job, that you find this partner, that you have these children, that you go to university and you have this education. And it was nice for someone to say, well, okay, me and all these other people have done this with our lives, and we might not necessarily have taken that path. So I became really, really interested in that. I don't like the word self-help, but in that kind of movement of saying, maybe it's worth exploring our potential a little further. So I think that rubbed off on me. And then when I, went into this horrible dark patch where, I just gained so much weight and obviously my mood came crashing down. I don't know. I think there was just this. We live in the most resourceful time on the planet. I mean, you can pick up your phone, ask it any question in human history, and you'll get the answer. But I think someone says it's amazing that we have all those things, yet most of the time we're just looking at videos of cats.
Yeah.
So when we've got this incredible resourceful ability like the internet, the fact that we're talking across continents right now is astounding.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to saying, okay, well, now that we've got these resources, it's down to me to be resourceful to start applying some different questions to use these resources.
Yeah.
So I guess that's probably how it started. It was the self-help, the shaking the reality up a little bit, and then saying, okay, well, now we're in a time where we can do all these things. Let's put our foot down on the gas and see what we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here you are.
And here I am, yeah.
So we're here to talk about sleep today.
Yes.
Sleep is something that I have been battering on about for about 5 years, maybe more. And only in the last couple of weeks, maybe even just in the past month, it seems to be the sort of the new buzzword in the realm of health. So first of all, we had clean eating, and now we have clean sleeping. And it's been on everything from GMT, is it even called GMTV anymore in the UK? Like breakfast television. It's been there's a different Facebook Live broadcast about it every other day. It's in Women's Health magazine. It's in Cosmopolitan. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look, it's you need to learn how to clean sleep now. And I've been battering on about it for ages, so I feel like I'm just switched off to it. I'm just like, told you so. But you know a lot about sleep. In fact, you even have a whole chapter about sleep in your new book. So, sleep deprivation in the world of entrepreneurship, which I have been in for a long time, seems to be almost worn as a badge of honour. I didn't get much sleep last night. I'm only surviving on 2 hours sleep. I only had half an hour sleep. And it's just, everyone sort of seems to be like, who's had the least sleep? But what is it doing to our health? Yeah. So why do we need sleep? Why do we need to sleep?
So that's a really interesting question. That I think the answer is so broad. It'd be easy to say what would happen if we didn't sleep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what would happen if we didn't sleep? So
everything in your life, everything you can imagine, physically, mentally, and that could be things like Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, potential weight gain, depression, loss of libido, every factor that you can imagine to do with your health starts to plummet. Now, you're absolutely right. There is this weird badge of honour, and you hear it all the time where it's Leonardo da Vinci only slept 3 hours a night, and Thomas Edison was going on 4 hours, and Margaret Thatcher and Winston Churchill and all the Richard Branson, all these leaders that was especially supposedly inspirational in England. It's very much this. Well, okay, if you're a hard worker, you don't need sleep. If they can function, then that's something to aspire to. And actually, it is possible for some people to do that, but that's actually a genetic quality. So some people can genetically, and it's only about 2 to 5%, so it's really not a majority. Sorry. But so some people can function on those levels of sleep. But for the rest of us, 95, 98%, that's going to be impossible. Even just an hour of sleep deprivation, we're generally going to be about 20% slower and 14% less accurate. So if you think about doing 5 days work, well, actually, if you're having really, really good sleep, then technically you're getting another day's worth of productivity in by being 20% faster. So you're right, sleep, to be really fair, isn't sexy. It's not a sexy answer, is it? I mean, when people come up with all these new, really cool fad diets, a lot of them might not work for everyone. but at least it's the sexy answer people were hoping for. Whereas if you said, have you thought about going to bed earlier? Because that will really, you're going to be 20% faster, 14% more accurate. Your libido is going to come back. Your hunger levels are going to straighten out. Your depression is going to get reduced. Well, that's not sexy at all, because people, to feel productive, people feel like they need to be doing something. But sleep, this is one of the biggest things, and I believed it for years. I thought that when you sleep, everything slows down. You're letting your body rest. Generally, your brain at times is working 4 times as hard when you're sleeping than when you're awake.
Wow.
So your body really, really needs that. And again, it's circadian rhythms. If you look at all these indigenous tribes around the world, and you might have had it yourself if you've got any listeners here who are big campers. The moment that you're starting to camp in the wild and you're looking at screens a lot less, generally people are going to be shattered at about 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. They'll say, well, what the hell else are we going to do? I feel a little bit knackered here. So let's go to bed. And people will find themselves waking up closer to 5 a.m., 6 a.m. than, wanting to just kill their alarm clock and drag themselves to the shower at 7:30. So it affects absolutely everything. And a lot of people, when they come and see me and they're feeling depressed, or actually for anything, one of the questions that I'll always ask them is, what is your sleep pattern like? Because that alone can tell us so much. I think, going back to what Tony Robbins used to say, the one thing that I would just fundamentally disagree with him on now, just because the research is so obvious, is he said, hey, if you want to develop yourself, have an hour less sleep a night and give that hour to yourself, and then you can be more productive in the mornings.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times.
That's just not the case. By having an hour's less sleep and giving ourselves an hour in the morning, well, technically we're still going to be in a net deficit of our productivity. So I think that's just worth thinking about, that you're going to be a lot more productive working 6 hours a day with a really good night's sleep than you would 8 to 10 on no sleep. It's all about the net surplus that we get at the end of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. So if, we've already discussed that you're, pretty much every bodily function is going down the drain if you lose your sleep, or if you don't prioritise sleep. But what, we risk losing cognitive function, we risk losing productivity. But what do you know about what we risk in the way of our health, our body weight, our hunger levels? Because I work, my job, my business is surrounding the sort of industry of weight loss for women.
Yeah.
So in that realm, what do you know about how important sleep is when it comes to things like weight loss, fat loss, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So a big part, and again, it's more affected by its indirect relationship to stress. So we know that the moment that we're feeling stressful, we're one of the animals on the planet that can be stressed on a chronic level. So the moment that you see a rabbit being chased by a predator in the forest, it will get a huge spike in the stress hormone cortisol. And it's really, really good in that moment to have acute doses, because suddenly its bodily functions are optimized to help get away from a predator. But the moment that chase has stopped, you'll generally see that rabbit or any prey, and you might see it in a David Attenborough nature documentary, they will start to shake themselves. They'll literally start to shake themselves, and that will help release bits of trapped cortisol in their body.
Right.
Now, we as people have the ability to imagine something going wrong that hasn't even happened yet. And just by imagining that going wrong, it's amazing. It's like we're sitting in a movie theatre watching the worst film over and over again.
That's me.
Even though the film's not real.
That's me. Yeah. I'm a professional at
that. Well, that's the majority of people, isn't it? It's tomorrow, hypothetically, it's a very peculiar thought, but tomorrow really doesn't exist. The only thing that is existing is us two having this conversation right now. But I have the ability to imagine something going wrong tomorrow, and automatically, biochemistry, I can release a stress hormone. And if I'm really good at it, then I can do that over and over again, because the part of the brain that actually is optimized most in a stressful situation is something called the amygdala. And the amygdala is designed to see, or it's evolved, to see things from the worst perspective, but something that is very, very good at is being obsessional. So when you start to think of something going wrong, chances are you don't think about it once. You think about it 50 times. You think about it over and over and over again of everything that could go wrong tomorrow. So we just consistently build that level of stress up throughout our bodies. And you can feel it at the end of the day. If you've had a hard day's work, you can feel it in your shoulders, you can feel it in your lower back, even though you've barely moved throughout the day, because your body is building up with that stress hormone. Now, cortisol has a few qualities on a chronic level that just destroys us. One of which being it's the number one immunodepressant, meaning that nothing will damage your immune system and make you more ill than cortisol. It's also the number one aging hormone. But because it's designed, I need to stop saying designed, it's evolved to be used in a fight-flight response, well then something that we really want to have access to if we're in a stressful situation is our fat stores. Mm-hmm. So the moment that we've got more fat stores, then chances are if we're in a stressful situation, we're going to survive a lot more. But actually, as we're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, if we've got high levels of cortisol in our body, if we're feeling stressed, it doesn't matter what we're doing, that weight is very, very unlikely to budge depending on our genetic tendency to hold fat. Some people, if their body starts to become really acidic through the levels of stress hormones in their body will just flush it out, which means that actually they'll start losing weight very, very quickly. For most of us, though, generally if our body's quite acidic, then our body's going to hold on to lots of fat to protect the organs. And cortisol is so acidic that just that build-up, our body says, okay, we need to hold on to this fat here. Mm-hmm. So the moment that you're stressed, you know as well as I do that just losing weight ain't really going to happen for a lot of us. So that's the main way that sleep would affect weight loss, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But hunger levels can be triggered with that as well. Yeah. But the main point I'd say is if you're stressed throughout the week and you've got chronic levels of cortisol, then that fat ain't getting budged.
And sleep deprivation, does that raise your cortisol level, your chronic cortisol level?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the things, and I mean, sleep is quite a difficult subject because we can't see. There's quite a few measurements that we can use to see what's happening to someone when they're sleeping. Mm-hmm. But when someone's dreaming, it's quite hard to know what that really represents. I mean, Sigmund Freud had a book called The Interpretation of Dreams, and a lot of people don't even class Freud as a great psychiatrist anymore. They think he was just an incredible cocaine addict.
But he does. There are a few theories, a few hypotheses that he's made that still make me think maybe the surge of drugs through the system actually did bring out some maybe sort of sense.
Something. Maybe.
So here's a question for you. So we've covered what we risk by losing sleep. Some of us, I have a lot of clients who in fact pretty much everybody that comes to me, I would say 99% of people are struggling with lack of sleep, not due to for the want of trying, but say we lose sleep due to for a couple of weeks. Maybe we've got some really, really tough stuff going on at work, and we lose. We go through 2-3 weeks where sleep is really poor and really suffering. Can we make that up? So could we maybe sleep for 3 days and that everything would be restored? Is it possible to make up for lost time?
In a weird way, yes, but the safest and the most productive way to do it is the other way around. So that would be to actually bank hours of sleep a couple of days before you're about to deprive yourself.
Ah, okay, that's really interesting.
It's very, very fascinating that in a weird way we can see ourselves as a battery. The thing is, whenever we're doing sleep deprivation, I think first of all we have to work out what the cost is. Is it really going to be worth us losing sleep over, knowing that it's going to affect everything? I think that's the first question that really should be asked. But generally, instead of making up the damage that you've done for your body, I say it's best to prevent the damage that could be done to your body by being able to bank those hours prior.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And okay, so what would you say is the definition of a good night's sleep? So if I said to you, right, did you have a good night's sleep last night? Yes. Okay. What did that consist of?
Good question. So first of all, a sleep that wouldn't have had many breaks, a really good sleep. We have a few different cycles in sleep. So we generally have to enter about 5 stages of sleep. I mean, very smartly, they're called stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and REM. And REM's the most important aspect of sleep. We can go into that in a little bit more detail later because it's really, really fascinating. But our brain systematically goes through cycles of spending certain amounts of period in each stage. And for it to go through all 5 stages, generally, it takes around about an hour and a half.
Okay.
So we want to get around about 4, ideally 5, for some people even 6 cycles of the stage 1 down to REM. If you're waking up feeling really, really groggy, there's a few reasons for that, but what might be happening mostly is that you've forced yourself to wake up in a particular stage that isn't the way that you would normally wake up had you been left to your natural devices.
Okay.
So really you want to wake up back in stage 1. So I'd say to have any sleep, and you might have had it before where you just had a little 20-minute kip and you woke up feeling really, really great.
Yeah.
Because actually you woke up at the right stage.
Okay.
Whereas if you forced yourself to wake up during REM, which is generally when we're dreaming, it's the deepest level, we're going to feel really, really groggy, even if it means that we were only sleeping for 25 minutes.
Okay.
So any sleep that I'd recommend, a good night's sleep, is waking up at the right time, meaning that you've had enough of those stage 1 to REM cycles. Going to bed when you're tired, really, really good one. And I mean, you know if you've had a good night's sleep if you wake up and you're not wanting to throw your alarm clock across the room. So any sleep where you wake up and you're ready to start the day, because that's how we're supposed to be waking up. We're not supposed to be waking up feeling like we could do with 10 more minutes. We're forgetting that our body's trying to tell us something when those moments happen. Yeah.
I think we beat ourselves up, if we wake up and we're not, ready to dive into the day. It's, I've not had enough sleep. I'm not good enough. I'm too tired for this. This day is going to be crap, and it can set us up for like a completely crap day ahead, especially if it goes on and on and on for a long, long time. Obviously, there are exceptions to that rule, maybe new families who have a brand new baby that's keeping them up all night, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I can identify with that. There are days, I prioritise sleep because I know why I need to have sleep. But there are still days. I had, what day was it? Saturday morning, and I woke up and I just felt like I could have gone back to sleep for 3 or 4 hours. Unfortunately, I couldn't, but had I been able to, I would have, because my body was telling me that's not enough, or you've woken up at the wrong time. But generally I sleep really well, thankfully. So what can, if someone is listening, and I'm sure there will be, who is really struggling with their sleep at the moment, and I know this is a really hard question to answer because the reason they are struggling to sleep is probably going to be different for everyone. But are there things that we can do that will help to improve the quality of your sleep? So maybe falling asleep, staying asleep, and waking up feeling refreshed. Are there some basic things that someone that's listening could do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, there's actually quite a few things that we can do that most of us just aren't doing at the moment. So you hear a lot, obviously, in your profession, the term junk food probably comes up a lot. But another phrase that we're starting to throw in there now is junk light.
Right.
So there are different wavelengths, different frequencies of light that can help stimulate and also relax us. So something that our caveman ancestors never had would have been blue LED lights. For obvious reasons, they just didn't have the technology. But we have blue LED lights in the majority of our surroundings now, and that's through our laptops, that's through our phones, tablets. When we're at work and we've got those fluorescent lights, all blue LED lights. The problem with that is that it stimulates a chemical in our body neurotransmitter, sorry, called dopamine, which is what we want if we're exercising or if we're having sex or if we're just having a good time. Generally, we're having a nice little kick of dopamine. The problem that blue light does is it inhibits our ability to make something called melatonin, which is the hormone needed to sleep. So if people are looking at blue light, whether it's through their TV, tablet, laptop, phone, even around about 2 hours before bed, it means they've actually suppressed the hormone that's trying to let them sleep, and they've got their brain wired. So generally when people are going to sleep, their thinking will be really, really quick. No one is there at night not being able to sleep and in their heads going, oh, I can't get to sleep. No one does that. They're saying, oh, I can't sleep. Why can't I sleep? This is annoying. What if I turn over here? So they have a really fast internal dialogue a lot of the time. And a big part of that is because their body has been shooting all this dopamine in their body and stopped them from being able to release melatonin. Now, there are ways around that, though. So there are, if you just cannot go without looking at your phone or tablet 2 hours before bed, generally you can download an app, and the main one that I normally use is called Flux, and it's completely free. So that's Flux, Flux. And what that will do is it will actually change the color of your screen depending on what time of day it is. So the moment that the sun's starting to set, it'll turn your screen from the blue LED light to a more orange-yellow light. And that means that our body isn't having the dopamine being released, but instead we're able to start releasing the melatonin. So we're actually not suppressing a hormone that wants to be used to make us sleep.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can also just get a blue light filter for our phone, which again is an app, and which again will just turn that from a blue screen to a sort of a yellow-red screen. So that would be the first thing that I'd recommend. Let's not be looking at junk light, because just by looking at blue light, and this is probably a little bit more complicated than you wanted, but I think it's really important to hammer this home.
No, go for it.
Is that in our cells we have essentially a little organ, so it's called an organelle called mitochondria, and this is responsible for all the energy in our body. Now, when our body is having to break down blue light in our retinas, in our eyes, our mitochondria is having to strain itself because it's using a lot more energy just to break up that blue light. So it means that it's like we're working at high altitude but not getting any of the benefits. So blue light actually does nothing for us if we're trying to go to sleep. So that's the big one. That's the number one thing that I think a lot of people aren't doing that they automatically could. And it's great because they could still use their mobile phones as much as they wanted to prior. They're just not putting strain on their body that they don't need to. Another one is caffeine. And caffeine seems so obvious. But again, a little bit like sleep on how well people can function, caffeine is very much related to genetic function. So there are some people who can metabolize caffeine really, really quickly. Fantastic. But for the majority of people, we metabolize caffeine quite slowly. And for most of us, caffeine will have a half-life of about 5 to 8 hours, meaning that actually if you have a cup of caffeine, about 250 milligrams at around about midday, well, generally by around about the time you finish work or 8 o'clock, half of that will be out of your system.
Wow.
Meaning that you've still got lots of caffeine in your body when you're going to sleep. For the majority of people anyway. The problem with caffeine is people think that it gives them a really good boost. They go, oh great, I have my caffeine fix and I'm on it like Sonic. But generally, caffeine doesn't actually give us energy at all. What it does really, really well is it masks fatigue.
Right.
It actually makes us think that we're not tired when we're absolutely shattered. And the way that it does that is if we've been thinking hard, if we've been working really, really hard all day, and our neurons, the nerve cells in our brains are just firing and wiring like no man's business, we build up something called adenosine. And what adenosine does in our body is it binds to certain receptors that send signals to our brain to say, oh, okay, Rachel, we're a little bit shattered now. I think it's probably best that we just take a load off. What caffeine does is it beats adenosine to those receptors. So your brain just never ever gets the signal that we need to start slowing down for a moment. So stopping any signal coming to us in our body is a really, really dangerous thing, especially when we know it's dealing with something as important as sleep. So another thing, other than don't look at junk light, is be really, really careful with caffeine because it's supposedly got some health benefits. Haven't done much heavy research into it, but I know that masking fatigue stopping our body getting natural signals that it's built to get isn't really good for us long term. So, and you know that if we're slowly depriving ourselves of sleep of just a couple of days, a week, we know those horrible symptoms that we spoke about are going to start coming. So those are the two really big ones. A third one that can be really helpful is sleeping in a cooler room. So I don't know the temperature in Celsius, sadly, but if you're sleeping in a room that's between 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, that's going to be a lot better for your sleep cycle. And because when you're sleeping, your body can find it quite difficult to stay cool. So if it's not having to use extra effort, if you like, to stay cool in the night, essentially you're giving your body a bit of a treat then. It's being able to focus more on what it's supposed to be doing, which is clearing that cortisol, fixing your immune system, and all the other recovery benefits of sleep. So those are the three really big ones. Something to add to that, and this is really to link with the junk light actually, it would be to sleep in a black room. If you can have earplugs, if you can put a blindfold on, if you can sleep in a black room, that would be great. Because even I don't know if you stay at a hotel, and very often you try and turn the hotel TV off, and there'll still be that red standby button.
Yeah.
Now, even just that red standby button, the photoreceptors on our skin can actually sense that bit of light. And again, caveman ancestors never had LED light shine on them in the middle of the night. But even that light landing on photoreceptors on our skin can change our melatonin cycle. It can change the levels to which we're releasing the hormone that makes us sleepy. So the moment that we've cut out junk light and predominantly all light when we're sleeping, we're automatically guaranteeing that our hormones are going to be releasing and absorbing in the way that we want them to. So those are the big three, I'd say, to get sleep. But you just know that in this day and age, people are on their phones, people are just sinking caffeine like it's water. Then we're just doing the absolute opposite of what our bodies are desperate for us to do.
Yeah, and I think, it's, how can I say this without offending anyone? I say that all the time now. I think, if we really have to realise the importance of this now. My audience, and I'm not pinning this down, but my audience are generally, the vast majority, between the ages of 25 and 45. So, now is the time for those of you out there that are between that age range, and, anyone else as well, now is the time we really have to think about how important it is that we get out of this mindset that having less sleep is cool and having more sleep is uncool. You see it on social media all the time, like, is it time for bed yet? Oh, 9 o'clock, you're going to bed at 9 o'clock, or you're such a granny, that kind of thing. But, like, sometimes I'm even struggling to get to, like, 9:30, 10 o'clock. Like, it's actually a bit different out here, and it's something I noticed a long time ago, years and years ago, when I first came to Australia, is that they are a little bit further ahead in the sort of sleep realm. And I'm not going to tar everyone with the same brush, but when the sun goes down and at 9 o'clock, 9:30, people are getting ready to go to bed here. It's not everybody, but more people than in the UK. And when the sun comes up, the sun goes down here. I'm not sure if everybody knows this. Here's just a fun fact for you. The sun goes down here at roughly the same time every single day. Like, there's not much fluctuation in that throughout the year. So I'm in Queensland about 6 o'clock, 6:15, the sun is going down. So we get a good 2-3 hours of evening and pitch black. Like, it doesn't just get gradually darker here. 1 minute it's light outside and the next minute it's pitch black.
Wow. I've never gone to Australia. I'd be desperate to come. It sounds amazing.
You totally should. And then you get those hours of darkness before bedtime, and everyone's up with the sun, like 5:30 in the morning, sometimes earlier than that. And that's kind of getting in the rhythm of where you live will be different, but getting in the rhythm of the sunset and the sunrise is, I think, for me, and this is something I've really worked hard on, because I was not a morning person And I am now, like, ridiculously one of those annoying ones, you know. But I go through phases where I'm not, but working with the way that the world works is one of the things that helped me the most with my sleep. So, you know, waking up when the sun comes up, going to sleep when the sun goes down. Not every night, obviously. Do have a bit of a social life. But that, you know, that on, you know, on top of your like amazing tips, has been something that has really helped me a lot. It's just to sort of go with, don't fight your natural rhythm. And I really would like people to sort of, instead of wearing sleep deprivation as a badge of honour, start wearing that 9 o'clock bedtime as a badge of honour. Like, oh, you got to your bed at 9 o'clock? You are so cool.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, there's something in that, isn't there? And I think it's maybe writing down the reasons of what that would actually give you. Because, yeah, maybe going to bed at 9 isn't cool, but it's much cooler to be a better parent or a better partner or better at your job, or just better at whatever you feel your purpose is. That's so much cooler than someone who just watches a crappy soap sort of 9 or 10 at night. It really is.
I think so.
And people will notice a difference. I think after about, I've heard it's 6 days or so, if you've started to have really good sleep, everything changes. People will notice it by day 6, is what I've heard. And I have no doubt that that's true. But something that you've just said there, perfectly working with the world, that again, that's a genetic quality. About 98% of us, our sleep pattern is based on our circadian rhythms. It's based on the rising and setting of the sun. And so even genetically, yeah, absolutely spot on. That's how we're wired. And going against anything that's an evolutionary trait is going to cause mismatches. It's going to cause symptoms like extra stress, and like all those things that we mentioned, loss of libido. These are symptoms of doing something that's against what our biology is really expecting from us. And there's a whole plethora of that as well. But yeah.
It's fascinating. I think we've just opened a whole box of other things that I want to talk to you about. Maybe we need to do a part 2 to this episode.
Absolutely,
I do try to keep the episodes to about 45 minutes, so we are going to wrap up here. But there is so much more we could speak about. So I'm sure if you have time, we could squeeze in a little part 2 at some point.
Absolutely, I'll be up for that.
But it's been really insightful. It really has been so interesting to speak to you about everything that you have to offer, you know, not just on sleep but on everything really. So tell me a little bit about what you're up to. So you've written a book, and you can actually, like, you can go and buy it now.
Yes, if they go on to just LeicesterSavage.com, they'll have access to the book, the video course that we've recently done, and obviously consultations with me as well. It's exciting, and it's obviously the book. I say at the very, very beginning, it took 8 years and 3 weeks to write. I mean, and actually, we only wrote it. We wrote it in about 3 weeks. My business partner and I. And we just absolutely hammered it out. It's a good sized book. It's just under 300 pages. It's nice and digestible, but that came from the 8 years of research. That came from the 8 years of going up and down and figuring out what the hell this was all about. But yeah, we cover sleep in there. We have about 7 principles in the book, and we put rest/sleep as the last one. But the first thing that we say in that chapter is that actually it's the number one principle. But yeah, there's a whole other host of things that can change our biochemistry. And sleep is one of them. But that's what we're predominantly doing at the moment. We're hopefully going to be setting up some retreats at the end of the year, which should be really, really exciting, because it's people know things logically. You can read a book and you can logically understand something. You can logically read a cigarette packet and know that it's going to kill you. But emotionally, if you don't really get it, it's pointless. So the idea of being able to take people on these retreats, or being able to do something like the video course as well, it's that really, really important transition between knowing something on a logical level to actually being able to apply it. Because so many people say, Reg, you're right, I should get some more sleep, but they don't know. They don't know, otherwise they'd be getting more sleep. So the book, the video course, the retreats that we're hoping to do later this year are all about trying to help people actually make that transition, so it no longer becomes knowledge, it actually becomes wisdom. And that's the thing that we're really trying to ingrain here. So it's been a really, really exciting ride. And yeah, like obviously I'd love to speak again at some point. I think there's a whole host of things that we need to get into.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. No, I really appreciate your time, and the retreat sounds amazing. I will make sure that I've got the link to your website and everything on the show notes of the podcast. So if you're listening on iTunes on an iPhone right now, you can just tap the screen and you'll see the notes attached to this episode, and the link to Leicester's website will be there if you want to find out more. Just click on that link. Super duper simple. Well, thanks again for your time. Hopefully we'll get you back.
Absolutely. No, count me in. It's been really fun.
Take care.
You too.
Thank you so much again, Leicester, for that wonderful chat about sleep. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you have any feedback or you want to ask any questions, you can contact me. Super simple. Just email me. My email address is rachel@walkthetalklife.com. Please don't forget to leave a review. You can now do this straight from your phone on iTunes. If you use iTunes, just scroll down, hit a little 5 stars, type a quick review. It means a lot to me. If you're listening and you really enjoyed this episode, please do that. Just before I go, this episode was sponsored by Transform 21. That is my online weight loss program that starts once a month, and it just so happens that the next group starts this Thursday. So if you want to find out more about that program, just head on over to www.transform21.co.uk. You can find out more information about that there. And yes, we have a module on sleep and stress in there, so you can learn even more if you want to. All right, guys, that's it from me for another week. I will catch up with you soon. Hope you enjoyed that. Leave a review. Catch you later.